360 degrees. The gun's design was finalised in 1936 and came into service shortly after that, in early 1936. It was considered at the time the finest anti-tank gun in the world. It's quite heavy, it's heavier than contemporary anti-tank guns from other countries because it has a very ingenious carriage which adds considerably to the weight. The carriage, when you see it coming into action, you will see that the carriage sits on a tripod, or the gun sits on a tripod on the carriage, and the wheels need to be removed in order for it to fire across a full 360 degrees. It can, with a well-trained crew, be brought into action in under a minute. So we will actually see the detachment. I said crew then, didn't I? I'm in trouble now. The detachment can bring it into action in under a minute, and we will see them do that shortly. Initially, the gun was operated by the infantry, but in 1938, the Royal Artillery took over control of all anti-tank guns in the British Army. So from 1938 through to the end of the war, and in fact until the 1970s, the Royal Artillery operated all of the British Army's anti-tank assets, whether they were guns or missiles. They were deployed in batteries of 12. Now you can see here the number one of the detachment has now got out. He is going to mark the position that he wants his gun to come into action. As it drives past, you'll see there's a large box attached to the shield of the gun that contains 12 ready-to-use rounds of ammunition. A lot of people think that the 2-pounder didn't have a high explosive round. It did, but it was very, very ineffective. It was mostly used to fire a solid armor-piercing shot. Let's see whether they can do this in a minute.
I have a timer.
Each member of the detachment has a specific job. Driving round now, you'll see the 6-pounder. So once the gun has been unhooked, the towing vehicle will depart to a safe distance. You'll be able to see here that the detachment deploy the legs of the carriage, and then they'll lift one up, take the wheel off, go around to the other side, take the other wheel off, using a trail spike. Once the gun's deployed, the shield goes up. The 2-pounder had a maximum rate of fire of 20 rounds per minute. Could be fired using a foot pedal or 2 hand levers.
Yeah, I'm bracing.
These guys swing round. 6-pounder you can see coming round is obviously an airborne 6-pounder being towed by a jeep. Would normally be towed by a Lloyd carrier. So the 2-pounder crew detachment, I've done it again, I'm going to be buying the beer tonight. This 2-pounder detachment can all fit behind the shield, which is splinter and bulletproof, but pretty much nothing else. The number one would always stand off to one side to search for targets. And there would always be a Bren gun on the detachment to provide local defence if they were particularly close to the enemy. I'll just hand over back to Adrian. He can tell you a little bit about the 6-pounder while we wait for them to deploy.
Hello again. I promise I will call the detachment a detachment. This is the 6-pounder. After Dunkirk, the British Army had abandoned all their 2-pounder anti-tank guns, but it was already evident that the 2-pounder as a weapon was insufficient for the extra armour now being put on the German tanks in the desert. But unfortunately, because we were a bit thin on anti-tank weapons at that time, we continued with the 2-pounder for another couple of years in 1940 and 41, when we developed the 6-pounder, and when we had managed to manufacture enough of the 6-pounders, these steadily replaced the 2-pounders in the British Army. To give you an idea of how rapidly we manufactured the new 6-pounder, in 1941 only 201 were manufactured. In 1942, the following year, 17,854, with a further 16,500 being manufactured the year after. We were well equipped with this weapon. It had immense penetrating power. It was copied by the Americans as the 57mm anti-tank gun, and during its service from El Alamein right through to the end of the war, it proved a formidable weapon. And by increasing the type of ammunition, so we could have a discarded sabot, we could extend the life of the weapon to be more effective. So therefore, with the normal 6-pounder armoured piercing, penetration at 1,000 yards was 74mm of frontal armour at a 30-degree angle. And therefore the Tiger had 1,000mm, so you would think it would bounce off. But then we brought out both an armoured piercing capped shot, but once we brought out the discarding sabot weapon, which was basically a tungsten bolt that threw off the external parts of the sheath that fired it out of the weapon, we could penetrate 146mm of armour, more than enough to go through and kill a Tiger with aplomb at 1,000 yards. Now then, both the guns are now rapidly in action, and what we will do now is hand over to the number ones on the 2-pounder weapon, who will engage and be prepared for the shot. That's the 2-pounder. Now we shall engage with the 6-pounder. Well, there we go. What we shall do now is have both weapons. Thank you, thank you. We shall have both weapons fire simultaneously, just to give you a bit more fun, and then each weapon will independently fire their final 2 rounds to give you a grand finale. So,
Two-pounder and 6-pounder, 1 round, engage. Okay, 6-pounder is going through a misfire drill at this point.
Sure, it's a
Number
drill.
one is calling check breach. 6-pounder's now out. You try firing twice. If it doesn't fire on the second, then everyone, half of the detachment will move to the rear. The number one and the number two check the breach, and they'll retire to the rear. And the gun will have to stay there for 10 to 15 minutes, just in case the round fires itself, detonates inside the breach. I think we need to give the 6-pounder crew detachment a big round of applause. Excellent drills there. And 2-pounder, engage. Demonstration of rapid fire there. Thank you, 2-pounder. So the 2-pounder will now come out of action. The 6-pounder will have to stay there until safety has checked the round. Bit of technical information on the 2-pounder while they bring the gun out of action. Its weight in action was 1,720 pounds, which is almost a ton. It's quite a heavy gun for its size. At a muzzle velocity of 2,650 feet per second, which gave it a penetration of 42 millimeters of armour at 1,000 yards, compared to the 6-pounder, which was obviously a larger, more powerful gun of 72 millimeters. Still enough to deal with any tank on the battlefield in 1940. By 1941 it was outclassed as the Germans began to up-armour their tanks. But it continued being used all through the war, either as armoured car armament or in tanks in the Far East, where the Japanese tanks were very thinly armoured, and a 2-pounder could still deal with them all the way up to 1945. The Australians were still using Matildas with 2-pounders in 1945 and dealing effectively with Japanese armour at that time. As Adrian mentioned earlier, the British Expeditionary Force took the 2-pounder to France. We took 509 2-pounders to France, and we didn't bring any of them back, which left only about 300 in the UK, which is why the 2-pounder was continued in production rather than stopping the production to start production of the 6-pounder. It looks like the 6-pounder is going to be coming out of action now. Checking the misfired round. So the Garrison Artillery Volunteers do this we have the 6-pounder here and we have the 2-pounder, as you can see. We also have a 17-pounder Pheasant, which is a 17-pounder anti-tank gun on a 25-pounder chassis. We also have 25-pounder field guns. We've also demonstrated 3.7-inch heavy anti-aircraft guns. So it's a hobby that involves big heavy toys, and as you can see, quite loud ones. The ammunition box has now been put back on the Jeep. And the Bedford now being fired up to bring it back to limber up the 2-pounder. Once the guns have been limbered back up, they'll do a quick circuit of the arena, and then that will conclude our demonstration. Sorry. The 2-pounder has in some literature been described as a pop gun and of no particular use, but certainly from what you can see here, it is very quick into and out of action. It had a really good artillery, really good armour penetration performance, and certainly compared to the German equivalent, the PaK 35, 36, 37mm gun, it had a far superior performance.